for the new UFC Heavyweight Champion of the World, Bas Rutten.
In 2015, Bas Rutten was included in the UFC Hall of Fame, although he only fought there twice, while his split decision victory over Kevin Rendelman is considered by many fans as a real robbery and a bullshit. But one way or another, this is already a history, and the figure of Bas and his overall contribution to the development of martial arts is so significant that inclusion in the Hall of Fame does not even seem strange. Today we'll remember all the way of the legendary handsome Bas Rutten, who spent 33 fights in his career and won 28 of them. Sebastian Rutten, or Bas, was born in Wilburg, the Netherlands. In childhood, he was diagnosed with 2 serious diseases at once, skin eczema and asthma, during the attacks of which he lay in bed for 3 weeks and couldn't move at all, because even after taking a couple of steps he felt ill and suffocated. As Bas himself said, he grew up as a mum's pet, and because of his illnesses sat at home all day, and if he went out for a walk he got in trouble from his peers. At the age of 12 he watched the Bruce Lee movie Enter the Dragon and became interested in martial arts. However, his parents were against such hobbies, and Bas had to persuade them for 2 whole years before enrolling in the Taekwondo section. After 2 months of training, Bas was already beating down brown belts. In one of the street fights, Bas broke the nose of one guy and ended up in the police, so after such an incident training could be forgotten. Only when our hero turned 20 and he moved out from his parents, he was finally able to resume training. But realizing that Taekwondo is rather limited, he began to study karate, boxing and then Muay Thai. At one of the first sparrings in Thai, Bas was laid down with a blow to the liver, and since then the liver kick has become his signature blow, and he destroyed the liver of his opponents no worse than a fake moonshine. Performing in Thai boxing, Bas, having won 14 early victories, also lost twice, with at least one by knockout which I found on YouTube. Soon Bas began to have problems finding rivals of his weight, and began to devote much less time to training, as he was forced to get a job, and he got a job as a bouncer in a casino. In 1993, Masakazu Funaki and Minoru Suzuki formed a new promotion called Pancrase. It was a hybrid of wrestling and real fighting, but with its own unique rules. It was impossible to beat with knuckles in the face, as well as with elbows. Before the fight, each fighter is awarded 5 points. If a fighter falls down, the referee opens the score to 10, and if he gets up, he continues the fight, but loses 1 point. If a fighter falls for a submission, then he can grab the ropes and the sub stops, but 1 point is also removed. The fighter who loses all of his 5 points the fastest loses. Well, besides this, there were no wait and rounds, and the fight lasted 15 minutes. Funaki and Suzuki were looking for fighters for the first tournament and arrived to Holland. In front of their eyes and sparring, Bas knocked out some champion of rings with a high kick, which the Japanese really liked. That's how he ended up in Pancrase, where he later became one of the most important stars of the organization. Already in the first battle, Bas showed the Japanese that he would have to be reckoned with. He sent Rushi Yanagisawa, who was the number 4 in Japan at that time, to the hospital. After this bright start, Rutten's rival was Takaku Fuki, who immediately showed Bas's weak side. He held the armbar and Rutten had to grab the rope and save himself, losing 1 point. But then Bas, after the guillotine, struck the ultra lever kick, after which the fight was over and the Japanese couldn't come to senses, being in pain. The third fight for Rutten in Pancrase was a bout with the Japanese legend Masakazu Funaki, who, let me remind you, was the organizer and the one who invited Bas to Japan. At the beginning of the fight, Bas knocked down Masakazu with a slap, but then the fight went to the ground. Funaki demonstrated to Rutten without what he wouldn't be successful in Pancrase fights. The Japanese held the submission and finished Bas, who after that began to pay more attention to grappling and especially leg locks.
Away from the rope, and there is the tap out.
In July 1994, Bas met the invincible Minoru Suzuki, and in this fight he demonstrated excellent work in a stance, throwing the Japanese with slaps and making knockdowns, while defending well on the ground and not allowing Suzuki to submit.
Guillotine choke again. Oh, on my feet. Right knee to the side of his body.
At the top of this battle was a shot to the liver and another bright knockout from Bas, who admitted that that day was one of the best in his life. Just 20 days later, a revitalized Bas took on one of the best fighters in Pancrase history and UFC Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock.
Right palm spin from Bas. Oh, and a nice exchange again. Oh, a little bit aggressive. Oh, hey!
The fight almost immediately went to the ground, and in this fight Ken showed Bas who is daddy here. He completely dominated the ground and stabbed subs like hotcakes, taking Rutten's 5 lives. And then he choked the handsome and showed that he still had work to do. But despite such a loss to Ken, Bas managed to rehabilitate himself in his next fight and choked BJJ black belt Jason DeLucia. In December 1994, Bas entered the King of Pancrase tournament, and his first opponent was another legendary fighter, Frank Shamrock, who won this fight by majority decision and later spoke of Bas as a fighter with an incredibly destructive strike and the mentality of a real street fighter. After the defeat by Frank, Bas put to sleep the Japanese Manabu Yamada and got the title, and at the same time revenge against the champion Ken Shamrock, who in parallel had already played in the UFC and was on a win streak of 8 wins. Only a minute has passed and Ken finishes Bas for the second time, this time with a knee bar. Bas took this defeat very closely, since for 4 weeks he trained the defense against it, but as it turned out later, he was taught incorrectly. Subsequently, he connected new coaches to his camp with whom he grappled 2-3 times a day. This defeat motivated him so much. Since that loss to Ken, Bas has won 11 consecutive victories, most of them by submission, so Shamrock's lesson was well learned. Among the losers were Maurice Smith, Guy Metzger and Jason DeLucia. At the same time, he became the King of Pancrase, beating Minoru Suzuki for the second time and unified the belts by defeating the interim champion Frank Shamrock twice. In September 1996, Bas fought against top contender Masakazu Funaki in a rematch 2 years later and is considered one of the greatest fights in Pancrase history. Championship fights didn't last 15 minutes but 20, and Bas's plan was to exhaust Funaki, who never fought more than 10 minutes. The beginning of the round was left for Bas. He started the fight well with cannon kicks, but soon found himself on his back after a takedown from Masakazu. The Japanese valued his liver, therefore he tried to finish Rutten on the ground as quickly as possible. Power slaps from Bas came as if they were home, and all takedowns from Funaki didn't bring any result, since Bas pumped perfectly and now wasn't such an easy target as in their first duel. Masakazu was noticeably tired and could no longer take Rutten to canvas, but he regularly found himself there with the help of Bas's magic slaps.
Punches me, goes right uppercut, left hook, right straight, knee to the head, punch, right straight, knee.
At the 17th minute of the fight, Bas got Masakazu and finished him with a knee blow, breaking his nose and cheekbone along the way, thus defending the title of King of Pancrase, and later admitted that this was his biggest victory in Pancrase. The next 7 fights were also successful for Bas. One fight ended in a draw and the rest in victory. At the same time, in the battle against Osamu Shibuya, Bas performed a unique technique, which was called the Bas Rutten's neck crank. In September 1998, Bas left Pancrase and arrived to UFC as a superstar. He went undefeated for 4 years and fought 19 times for that time, so his appearance was announced as the coming of the greatest martial artist in the world. Therefore, no one was even surprised when he was immediately given a title fight against Randy Couture. But Randy had its own special relationship with the UFC, and due to contractual disagreements, he left the organization, leaving the title vacant. Then UFC decided to organize a tournament of 4 fighters to compete for the title of champion over several tournaments. At the UFC 18 tournament, Bas fought Tsuyoshi Kasaka, and in a rather difficult battle for himself, he managed to finish the Japanese in extra time, thereby becoming the finalist of this mini tournament. At the UFC 20 tournament, the final fight took place, and Kevin Rendelman became his opponent. In this fight, Bas probably took more damage than in any other fights in his career. Already after 5 minutes, his nose was broken, but Rutten was not one of those who give up, and he decided to continue the fight. Kevin spent the whole fight taking Bas to the ground and laying hard, from time to time connecting the GNP. But Rutten, even lying on his back, tried to respond and inflicted damage on Kevin, especially in the second half of the fight.
For the new UFC Heavyweight Champion of the World, Bas Rutten.
This lasted 21 minutes, after which it was up to the judges, who gave Bas the victory by split decision. This result was perceived by many fans as a real robbery and bullshit, but despite this, Bas and Kevin became good friends in the future, and in part, it was this fight combined with the pressure of Senator John McCain that influenced the development and introduction of a set of rules and criteria for judges, which came into force from the next tournament, since before that the judges apparently judged everything by eye or by their mood. As for Bas, he soon gave up the championship to drop down in weight and take on old friend Frank Shamrock, who was dominating a division lower. But constant injuries knocked Bas out of action for many years, and he spent his next and last fight 7 years later, knocking out Ruben Villarreal. Here is such a bright and interesting career of the legendary Bas Rutten, who in addition to fighting was a commentator, analyst, actor, presenter, and he also has a whole series of DVDs on self-defense on the street, and even how to fight properly in a bar. Well, besides all this, he is just a funny man who is interesting to listen to, and there are a whole bunch of videos on YouTube with short stories of Bas about his life, adventures and various situations. Well, I have all my friends for today. If you like the video, put likes, write comments and create activity in the comments so that the video is promoted. And also do not forget about other videos on the channel, and see you all soon.